that even in a moment of triumph, the authorities would behave in such a vindictive manner towards not just Mr. Mandela, but also his fellow prisoners, in the hope that the resentment that they created would be unleashed upon Mandela himself. And there was another campaign I remember reading in the book. When they were on Robben Island, all the African prisoners were pretty much treated like errant children. And Mr. Mandela, as he became known, demanded that the prison authorities address him as Mr. Mandela, and all the other African prisoners as Mr. This, Mr. That, as you would any other person in any other walk of life. And it was little acts of defiance like that, where he refused to be browbeaten by his captors, but at the same time didn't hold any personal grudges or vendettas or bitterness towards his captors. That was a remarkable aspect of his character, and I would like to say that at least on a subconscious level, I would like to think that his example has rubbed off on me to some certain extent in a positive manner, and I hope it will continue to do so. It's just coming to me now, all the things he had to endure. He wasn't allowed to attend the funeral of one of his children by the authorities because of his political activity. How naive he was as a young man. Quite a charming story, because he was a man of privilege. He came from by African standards, privileged background, and he sort of rebelled against that because he wanted a life of his own. He wanted to make his own way in the world, and it was remarkable to read how he evolved from this rather naive but cheeky young man to this man who was being groomed by the British-backed authorities at the time to act as a sort of middleman between the British and the Africans, and how apartheid, when it came into force, dehumanized the African population, and not just the African population, but the Indian population, the mixed race population, how they would shut down every single peaceful and legitimate means of dissent against the apartheid regime, and how, as being as a contemporary of President Kennedy, how Mandela was compelled to resort to tactics of a violent nature because the apartheid regime was closing down all other peaceful avenues. They didn't just want to lord it over the non-white populations. They wanted to beat them into submission. They wanted to grind them face first into the dirt. The abuse of power, and how he was in his mid-40s by this point, how he had this sense of rage and injustice against the treatment of himself and his fellow Africans, how he would give a speech warning of a retribution against the security services, and to contrast how he was at that stage in his mid-40s to how he became an almost divine source of reconciliation and forgiveness and he wasn't a pushover. He was a tough man because he had to be a tough man, because he didn't just have to deal with the apartheid regime and international opinion. He also had to try and restrain and bring along with him elements of his own community that wanted to act in a more rash and violent manner, and how it was a difficult juggling act for him. And he had to do all this from a tiny prison cell, far away from his family, and the guilt he felt. That book, all the little anecdotes I can think of from that book, he really comes across as a fully human individual. He's more than just a legend. He felt, reading that book felt like I was reading about an equal, not just a great statesman, but of an ordinary human being who wasn't that far removed from someone like myself or yourself or the people listening to me ramble on about him right now.
God bless you for rambling on about him right now, Jonathan. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to say
no
these
problem, Tommy.
Fine, wonderful words.
I hope my words bring comfort to those listening.
Yeah, carry on, mate. Carry on. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, I mean, just it's the little things that it's not so much the main things that we that the media are talking about. It's the little personal details and foibles of his life before he went into prison that stand out to me, such as how he was pretty ignorant of smoked ham. He didn't realize that smoked ham had been cooked beforehand, and how he tried to compensate for perceived to be his ignorance of things that he didn't understand at the time, and also the conditions after he left Robben Island, when he was, along with two other colleagues, imprisoned in a rather damp underground facility where he caught tuberculosis and almost died. And it's just remarkable to think that if he had died, the course of human history might have taken a turn for the worse. And just how it's so many things, and I don't think I'm doing this man any justice. And I think the only person who can do justice to his life is Nelson Mandela himself through his book. And I know there's a film version coming out. It's either coming out or just come out, based on that book. But even so, that's just a caricature of his life. As well-meaning as it may be, and faithful and lovingly crafted, it is only a caricature compared to the words of the man himself and his experiences. How he used his imprisonment to educate himself, to educate others, to resist the system, even when it appeared that he had been beaten in the eyes of the apartheid authorities, and all the nasty little tricks and little slights they would use against him, and how he would just rise above it all. There was one incident that he wrote about where he was called in to meet I'm not sure if it was a parole panel, but a panel of inquiry, and they asked him about the ANC's Freedom Charter, which he'd helped to drawn up. And I don't know if you've ever read the ANC Freedom Charter, but it's one of the most appealing political manifestos ever written by any political organization or individual anywhere. It's a document that appears to have something for everyone. And he would talk about the Freedom Charter to these officials. And then when he had left the meeting in high spirits and told them how well the meeting had gone, his colleagues straightened him out and said that actually it was just a fishing expedition to gain intelligence on the ANC. They weren't actually receptive to his ideas or the ideas of the Freedom Charter. They were just looking for intelligence, and they preyed on his naivety to try and glean some information, even if it's only information of a psychological insight rather than the intentions of the ANC as a movement at the time. And he just came across as a very human, a guy that you can relate to. He was in that sense, he wasn't this man of legend, this man of myth or destiny that he's inevitably going to become with each passing year. He was just an ordinary man, someone that I could relate to, and an inspiration, someone to live up to. And for that first weekend in my new surroundings, he was like a companion to me through his works, and I can't imagine what reading his book must have been like for everyone else, what their experiences are, but I hope their experience of reading his book was as powerful as mine was, because he started writing that book in the mid-70s. It was suggested to him by one of his colleagues at the time that in order to focus international attention on his plight and the plight of Africans in South Africa, that he write his autobiography to coincide with his 50th birthday, and how he had made great progress on it. But after a few weeks, the apartheid authorities discovered that he had been writing his autobiography, and as a result, confiscated it and took away many of his privileges that he didn't get back for at least 3 years or so. How the apartheid regime, even then, was so determined to erase this man from existence almost, that they wouldn't even permit him to write his own memoirs. And it's only by almost pure chance that those early memoirs of Mandela survived the apartheid regime. If you read the foreword in the book, that autobiography almost never happened, because he had started writing it in 1974 and it had been confiscated, and for over 10 years, 10, 15 years, Mandela had thought it had been destroyed. But somehow, like the man himself, that early memoir, which forms the bulk of A Long Walk to Freedom, survived